Welcome to Sports House Podcast. I'm Chase House. I hate intros, and man, it is really hot in here where I'm recording this. So there's no AC in this room, and so I turned my fan off when I record, so you guys don't have to hear that. You're welcome. But it's like 90 degrees outside, and I have this huge window in here, so it just lets in all the heat, and then it just stays in here and cooks me. I have no shirt on right now. And my head is soaking wet from the shower. I got it all wet, so I feel nice and cool. It's like a microwave in here. It's just cooking me. I feel like a Doofenshmirtz quality bratwurst up in this bitch. Oh my gosh, I really don't ever think before I speak. So this is the first that I'm hearing of that too. But how about that for a quote? I'm like a Doofenshmirtz quality bratwurst up in this bitch. I want that on my tombstone.
Doofenshmirtz quality bratwurst.
All right, well, with that perfect transition, we'll get into the NBA playoffs. Game 1s are all in the book. There's been a few Game 2s in a couple series. I wanted to talk about my updated predictions for the first round games, and based on how the series are going, what I think is going to happen now. I'm going to start with this little prediction. There might be only one series that finishes in less than 6 games. Maybe 2. And those would be the 76ers and the Washington Wizards. That series might be over in 5, the 76ers winning. But also the Heat and the Bucks. The Heat looked bad yesterday. And I'm pissed as hell because I bet on them. So I don't think they're going to go down 3-0, though. I'll say that. Charles Barkley, was talking about how he thinks they're going to get swept. He said that at halftime of Game 2 when they were getting murdered, so I don't blame him for saying that. However, I'm not counting out Jimmy Buckets. Jimmy Butler in the playoffs, he's not getting swept. I would bet the house on the Heat to win next game. They're not going down 3-0, not with Jimmy Butler on the team. I don't think they'll win the series, especially without Victor Oladipo, who got hurt, who isn't playing in the playoffs. But with Jimmy Butler, they're not going to lose. They're not going to lose all. They'll lose the series, in my opinion. But they're not going to get swept. They're not going down 3-0, especially at home in Miami. Jimmy Butler's not going to let that happen. But that said, I see that series ending in 5 or 6 games. And if it ends in 5, I think that is the only series in the first round that goes 5 games. I think the Clippers will win in 6, the Jazz in 6, and I'll talk about all these, by the way, the Bucks in 6, and this one hurts me a lot to say because I'm a Celtic fan, but the Nets in 7, I'm giving them 7, the Knicks in 7, the Blazers in 7, and then the biggest upset of the first round, if you could call it an upset, which I think most people would, the Suns taking out the Lakers in 7. Mostly when a 2 seed defeats a 7 seed, you don't talk about it like it's an upset, but this year we would. But I really think, man, watching that game 1, the Suns versus the Lakers, the Suns look good, man. They look really good. Chris Paul, he got hurt in that game. He hurt his shoulder. He stayed in the game, made some plays. His shooting form was a little weird, and he kept losing the ball when he was dribbling with his right hand, but he stayed in the game because of the competitor that he is. And the Suns looked really good, and the Lakers, who came into the playoffs limping in, are playing one of the hottest teams in the entire league. And Chris Paul, he has something to prove. He definitely has something to prove. I mean, he never gets, what is it, the second round? I don't think he's ever gotten out of the second round. Or he has just once. But I think he's tired of that narrative. And now he gets traded to a Suns team, right? And when that happened, a lot of people just wrote him off. Well, there's Chris Paul's career. He's done. He's going to go end his career with the Suns. They might be all right, but then that's that. And he should be an MVP candidate. Any team that he goes to plays so much better. And Chris Paul, he's the real deal. And I think they prove it this year. I think he proves it, and the Suns prove it, that they're a damn good team. And the Lakers, man, they're in trouble. They should be really worried. I mean, LeBron comes limping into the playoffs, barely came back from his injury. Anthony Davis just coming off of an injury. He played bad in game 1, got outplayed by DeAndre Ayton big time. Also, LeBron got poked in the eye, supposedly, in that game. And I seen a meme. LeBron was laying on the ground for like an hour, of course, acting like he was sniped from the top row. Headshot. I seen a meme. It showed Kevin Pillar of the New York Mets, Joe Burrow, and LeBron James. And it said, time spent on the ground after an injury. Kevin Pillar spent 36 seconds after getting hit in the face with the 94-mile-per-hour fastball. 78 seconds for Joe Burrow after tearing his ACL, MCL, and suffering other knee damage. And then LeBron James was down for 80 seconds after getting supposedly poked in the eye. I just wanted to take a minute and, talk about how much of a bitch he is sometimes. DeAndre Ayton was the best big man on the court in game 1. Now, I don't know if it'll be like that the whole series. Probably not. But DeAndre Ayton, he's in a contract year. He's going to get paid if he keeps playing like he did in game 1. Outperforming Anthony Davis is going to get him in line for a big paycheck. But the Suns, man, I don't think the Lakers can get past them. I really don't. I think the Suns will take a 2-0 series lead. This is my prediction. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers tied it up after that. In fact, I think that's what'll happen. I think the Suns will go up 2-0. And then Los Angeles, when they go back to LA, I think they'll tie the series at 2. I think that series will be kind of back and forth after that. I think it'll go to 7 and the Suns will win it. Devin Booker, first time in the playoffs. He scored the most points for anybody that has no playoff experience in their careers. And he's proven that he's the real deal. He did last game. And I expect there's just a lot of players on the Suns that are trying to prove themselves. And the team in general is trying to prove themselves. Nobody thinks that they'll beat the 7-seed Lakers. Most people don't. But they're a good team, and I think that they do. I think they win in 7. The Trailblazers and the Denver Nuggets series, if Game 1 was any indicator, that this series is going to 7. And I expected that. I expected Portland to win Game 1, Denver to win Game 2. I think this series will pretty much be back and forth the entire time. Jamal Murray being out for the Nuggets, that I think that'll prove to be too huge in this series. They'll miss him too much. And Damian Lillard has been the clutchest player in the league for a few years now. I don't think the Trailblazers are going to lose to the Nuggets, to the injured Denver Nuggets. They're a good team, and I think Jokic wins the MVP, and he should. That's who I've been rooting for to win it the whole year. They got some good players. They can make some noise, but without Jamal Murray, who usually steps up in the playoffs, and we've seen what he did last year in the bubble, played insane. Without Jamal Murray, I don't know if they can really go much farther. I don't even think they get past the first round, but if they somehow did, I think that it ends there. I mean, they need Jamal Murray just like the Celtics need Jaylen Brown. They're just a different team without him. So I think Damian Lillard, Dame Dolla, and the Blazers take care of the Nuggets in 7. I think that'll be the most interesting series. That one and the Suns will be the most entertaining series in the first round. The next series that I'm talking about is the New York Knicks and Atlanta Hawks. And if Game 1 of this series tells you anything, it's that this series is going down to the wire too. Game 1 was so back and forth the entire game till the final second. Trae Young hits a shot with like half a second to go on the clock, and the Hawks win. Madison Square Garden, it was awesome to watch a playoff game on TV that had fans. And Madison Square Garden just seemed like the normal Madison Square Garden. Fans were rocking. The playoff environment is here, and it's so cool to watch. I've missed it. I missed watching games with fans and not like fake crowd like it's Madden. It's such a different atmosphere to watch a game with fans and live reactions rather than just being pumped in by some sound effect dude. But Madison Square Garden was rocking, and that series, I'm not sure exactly who's going to take it. I do think that it'll go to 7, though. I think there'll be a lot of Game 7s in this first round. This is one of them. And my gut feeling tells me that the Knicks are going to win it in 7. Derrick Rose, I think he's going to have a really good series. He's already had a good game 1, played vintage D Rose, hit the clutch shots down the stretch. They went to him rather than anyone else on their team. And Derrick Rose is like, hey, I'm the only one that's won MVP on this team, so give me the ball in closing times. And they did, and he came in clutch. He hit a shot with seconds to go. It just happened that Trae Young did the exact same thing, but with half a second to go. I think that's going to be a really good series. I'm so excited for the whole first round in general. I think this is going to be one of the most entertaining first rounds in a long time, especially because, I mean, teams finally have fans, home field advantage, and it's playoff mode now. For the first time, we haven't seen this in years. So teams are excited. They're all pumped up in their own ways. I think 4 series in this first round of the playoffs go to Game 7. And the next one is the one that I hate that I'm going to talk about and what I'm going to say about it. But I think the Nets will beat the Celtics in 7. And that a lot of you will probably think that is generous to give the Celtics 7 games without Jaylen Brown. However, the Nets, they have all the talent, obviously. But they've played like 9 games together, maybe 10 as starters with James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving. They've played like 9 games together. And if the Celtics, if they were healthy, if they had Jaylen Brown, I think that the Celtics could honestly pull an upset. But without Jaylen Brown, the Celtics aren't even the normal Celtics. And so any chance of an upset, it gets drastically shrunken. But when you're playing a new team for the first time, and by first time, I mean pretty close to the very first time. I mean, these starters have played 9 games together, and now it's playoff mode. If they go up against a good team, a good playoff team, it's trouble. Unless they figure it out fast, which is what they're hoping to do. And the Nets, they very well can. They very well can figure it out in like 2 seconds. I mean, they have all the stars to do it. And they can just figure it out on the fly. But if they run into a good team, it could be trouble in the playoffs. And luckily for them, they're playing the injured Boston Celtics. I think Jason Tatum is going to have a insane series. He's played this year like young Kobe, and he scored 53 times the past couple months. Last game, Jason Tatum against the Nets was on fire in the first half, and the Celtics led at halftime. And Tatum didn't make a single field goal in the second half. And the Celtics blew their lead, and they lost the game. The Nets are damn lucky that Tatum couldn't make a shot in the second half. They needed him to struggle the whole half. And it was like the first half in, I believe it was 132 consecutive halves that Jason Tatum scored a field goal in, and that streak came to an end. And the Nets should be counting their blessings because the Celtics had them the first half. And that's why I think the Celtics are going to win Game 2. And why I think the series will be close and go to Game 7 in general is because of Jason Tatum. He can score 50 or 40 on any given night. And when you have that guy on your team, you always have a chance. And the Celtics, you have to expect that Tatum is going to play good every game. And the Celtics, when they win, it'll be because somebody else aside to Jason Tatum, steps up. Kemba Walker, who struggled in game one, he's been really inconsistent this year. He struggled in game one. Tatum kept him afloat in the first half, but then when he struggled, the team sank. The Celtics, they're going to be, when someone else steps up, that they'll win the games. Because you have to expect that Tatum is going to play good every game. But Marcus Smart or Evan Fournier, who they just signed or traded for, or any one of these big guys. How about Robert Williams? He had 8 blocks, a Celtics record of blocks in a playoff game. Robert Williams, and he could be one that steps up and wins a game for the Celtics too in this series. I was a lot happier with Brad Stevens' rotations in this game. I was wondering where the hell these rotations were the whole season. Robert Williams finally got a lot of play time. I know he's had the foot injury, but the rotations that Brad Stevens made during the regular season honestly made no sense to me. And even though he had some guys that were injured, just the timing of when he would put in certain players made no sense. He'd put the worst players in at the worst times. And I thought game one, he did a lot better job of putting in the right players at the right time. And Robert Williams, I think he's going to have a really good series, and they need him to. They need his size. He's got to guard KD a lot when he drives down, and what did he have? He had 8 blocks, I believe, but I think he's extremely underrated. Robert Williams is extremely underrated. So I expect the Celtics to make some noise in this series and give the Nets a bit of a scare. I don't think they'll be able to pull it off without Jaylen Brown, but I do think that they'll make this series a lot closer than people think. Talent-wise, yeah, the Nets are the better team. They have the better players. They have the most stacked team in the entire league, but they haven't played together. And the Celtics, they play good together. They're a good team, minus Jaylen Brown. But also when you add the fact that this is the playoffs, and you have to go into TD Garden in Boston with that crowd, it might not be a full house, but it'll sound like it is. And Boston is one of the teams that gets the biggest advantage from their home crowd. So I think the Celtics are going to make this series really interesting, a lot more interesting than a lot of people will think. We'll see, but I think the Nets will win it in 7. I already talked about the Bucks. I think the Bucks will win in 7. I mean, in 6 or 5. The Jazz, man, I'm pissed at them too. I lost money on them too because, first of all, I thought Donovan Mitchell was going to play in Game 1. He didn't. He was a game-time decision. He was cleared to play, and then after the shoot-around, they said, never mind. I don't know why, but they said his ankle wasn't good enough to go, even though he was cleared to play. They probably played it safe, so he didn't play, and they lost. They were up big early, and they blew it, typical Jazz fashion, and they lost the game. And Rudy Gobert, who also, I had some prop bets on him, and that damn fool, dude, every time he's having a good game, I swear he doesn't know how to not foul some stupid way. He fouls out all the time. Like, dude, only needed, oh my gosh, I was so pissed. He was easily going to get the prop bets that I placed on him. If he played the damn game, his prop bets were 15 points and 15 rebounds. I took the over on both. And he was a rebound machine early on. And his points, he didn't really score. I think he had in the second half at some point, he had 7 points, 5 points. So he needed to get going offensively. And just as he started to, dude, he starts making the stupidest freaking fouls. And he has 4 fouls, and he's still playing he's still doing bonehead things. I mean, you'd think being one of the greatest defensive player of the year, that you'd know when to not, take stupid fouls. And he just held Valanciunas' arm when he went up for a rebound, and that was the foul that got him fouled out. It was like, dude, why? If you're going to foul someone to foul out, dude, tackle his ass with the game on the line. Don't freaking just pull his arm with 7 minutes to go in the game. and make an obvious foul that makes no sense. If he's in, the Jazz, they might come back and win. They made it really interesting down the stretch. Without Donovan Mitchell, I'm not surprised that they lost. But Gobert, dude, you got to play smarter. He's so important to their team, he can't get fouled out. But the Jazz, I think they'll be okay, assuming Donovan Mitchell comes back and plays, which I'm making this prediction with that in mind, that he does come back. I hope he comes back for Game 2. I mean, he was cleared for Game 1, so I assume he's going to be playing in Game 2, but who knows? If he does play in Game 2 for the rest of the series, I think the Jazz will win it in 6 games. And if Donovan Mitchell, if he played in Game 1, I think they win Game 1, and so I think they'd win the series in 5. But because he didn't play in Game 1, Grizzlies snuck out a win. I think they'll get another one in the series, but that's it. As long as Donovan Mitchell plays, I think the Jazz are far better of a team. So I have the Jazz in 6. And the next game that I'm going to talk about, this team is down in the series 0-1. The LA Clippers, trailing to the Dallas Mavericks in the series. The Clippers have the most pressure on them by far than any other team in the league. They have 0 championships, and they stacked their team. They have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. They made some trades. They have so much pressure on them. They fired their coach. They got rid of Doc Rivers, which I think was stupid, by the way. But they just made a lot of moves where they need to win and win now. They were upset last season in the bubble. They have by far the most weight on their shoulders. And now they're down 0-1 in this series to the Mavericks with Luka Doncic playing fantastic. They got to figure out a way to slow him down and to win this series, because it's going to be ugly if they, not only if they don't win the whole thing, win the championship, but if they don't win the first round series versus the Mavericks, it's going to be ugly, and there's going to be players moving all over the place from their team. Because you have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and you made trades halfway through the season. You traded out Lou Williams, you got Rajon Rondo. They need to win now. And Rondo, I think Rondo is going to be huge for him in the playoffs and in this series. Rondo, come playoff time, playoff Rondo, obviously you know where he got that nickname. He steps up his game in the playoffs. And he's a really good veteran leader, and I think he's going to be huge for the Clippers, especially in the playoffs. I think that was I would say Rajon Rondo is the Clippers' X factor. If he plays good, they're gonna win this series, and who knows how far they might go. I picked them to get to the NBA Finals, but man, I don't know it. But honestly, the Suns could take out the Clippers right now. It's gonna be interesting to say the least. But the Clippers, they are in trouble. They need to win now. They have the most pressure by far, but I think that they'll get it done. I think the Clippers will realize that their back is against the wall. Rondo will step up. I expect all these players to really put it together and stop playing so haphazardly, I guess. This is the playoffs, and you guys play on the Clippers, who are known for choking. So, of course, they have all the pressure in the world on their shoulders. But they have a lot of good players on their team that can sustain that pressure. Kawhi Leonard, he's been there, done that. Rajon Rondo. Paul George, I would include him, but I'm not going to because he hasn't really done anything in the playoffs in his career. He famously disappears in big moments in playoff games. So he's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders too, to prove that he can win games, but also prove that as a player he can step up in big games. And down 1-0 to the Dallas Mavericks losing that game at home, I think, is going to be a wake-up call to the Clippers and all those players that I just mentioned. And I think they'll pick it up from here on out. And I think they'll win the series in 6. And the last series that I want to talk about, the last series that I haven't talked about, the 76ers and the Washington Wizards. Man, I don't think I've ever been sold on the 76ers, if I'm being honest. Now, a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm a Celtic fan, and I hate the 76ers like I hate poison. But with Doc Rivers, they're a lot better than they've been in the past years. This is the year, if they made a playoff run, this would be the year because of Doc Rivers. And I think they'll win the series in 6. The Wizards really aren't the Wizards suck. I'll just say that. I was going to say they're not that bad, but they're pretty bad. They have good players. Like Bradley Beal, he's the second highest scorer in the entire league, and obviously Russell Westbrook, who just barely this season, a few games ago actually, made the all-time record for most triple-doubles in a career, which is crazy, but also shows, how common the triple-double stat is nowadays. But Russ averaged a triple-double again, and he's the reason that I picked them to cover last game, and they did. They were underdogs by 7.5. They lost by 7. And that's pretty much how I think the series will go. I think the good players on their team will play good enough to make it close, but not to win. They're not the best team. They do have talent, and Bradley Beal can shoot the hell out of the ball. Russell Westbrook, his fire is going to be at an all-time high in the playoffs like it usually is. But they're just not that good. I think the 76ers will win in 6. But that being said, I didn't see a single series that I think will be a sweep or, honestly, even 5 games. There's a couple, the ones that have the biggest chance to go in 5 games or less is the 76ers and the Bucks. But all the other games, man, I think they're going to go to 6 or 7 games. I think we're in for a really entertaining first-round playoffs. All right, I'm pretty much burning to death because the water on my head has evaporated into steam, and now I am boiling. So I'm going to go get my head soaking wet with water again. So we'll take a commercial break. We'll be right back after this message.
Lemonade for sale. Lemonade. Lemonade for sale, $1. Lemonade for sale. Oh, customer.
Hey there, little buddy. Selling lemonade?
Yeah, fresh lemonade.
Ooh, how much?
$1.
Wow, $1, huh? Hold on. Let's see if I can find it. Are you sure it's $1? That's pretty expensive. How about 50 cents?
No sales.
No sale. No. All right. Listen here, you stupid little moron. 50 cents is a good price for lemonade. Nobody's ever gonna spend $1 on your lemonade that looks like dish soap. Actually, give me that. Ew, it tastes like piss water. I want a refund. Give me 50 cents.
You never paid for it.
All right, listen here, you greedy little scum. I want my 50 cents, and I want it now.
Well, I don't have the 50 cents.
Hey, excuse me? Is there a problem here?
Yeah, your booger-faced son is selling liquid poop disguised as lemonade, and he owes me 50 cents. He's being a real freaking prick about it. You know what? I'm out of here.
Hey, you can't do that! Your lemonade stand sucks!
This has been an ad for Dart Styrofoam Cups, the best styrofoam cups in town.
Sports House Podcast.
All right, I am back and with a soaking wet head of hair. So we're ready to go. Next, I wanted to talk about the game 2s of the series and my predictions for each game 2. Tonight, the Celtics play the Nets, the Mavericks play the Clippers, and the Lakers play the Suns. And I already talked about the Celtics a little, but the Celtics, I think they'll tie it up tonight. I think Tatum is going to be on another level, and I think that'll be enough. I think Boston will pull that out. Tatum, I wouldn't be surprised if he scores. He's going over 40 for sure. I might even say he scores 50 tonight. Kemba, he's got to play better if the Celtics are going to win. I think he will. I think he'll have a bounce-back game. He usually does. It's pretty much like every other game. Kemba plays really good. So I think Boston will win it. Damn it, it's still hot in here. I think Boston will win it and tie up the series at 1. The Mavericks and Clippers down 1-0. I expect the Clippers to tie the series. And if they don't tie it tonight, man, they're in trouble. I think that this is a must-win game for the Los Angeles Clippers. A must-win game. You can't go down 2-0 in the first round, heading back to Dallas to play the Mavericks for 2 games. You can't be in a 2-0 hole that soon in the first round of the playoffs. This is just that would be too much Clipper. It is do or die for Los Angeles tonight, I truly believe. If they don't win this game, I don't think that they'll win the series. I think the winner of tonight's game, Mavericks versus Clippers, wins the series. And my gut feeling is that the Clippers are going to win tonight. And the last game of the night actually starts 30 minutes before the Clippers and Mavericks. I don't know why it's on my phone as the last game, but the Lakers and the Suns. And like I said, I think the Suns are going to go up 2-0 in this series. I think it'll be tied after 4, either way, 2-2. But at home in Phoenix, I think the Suns are going to go up 2-0. I think they're going to win. Hopefully Chris Paul's all right. I know he's going to play if he played last game while he was really hurt. Hopefully he plays good enough. But Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, if they play as good as they did, they'll be fine if Chris Paul's a little hobbled. As long as he's out there being the captain, the general of their team, it won't really affect them if he's playing a little hobbled. But if those guys aren't playing very good, or if one of them isn't playing very good, then yeah, it's going to affect them and they'll lose. Because I know Chris Paul's not going to be 100%. He had his shoulder contusion last game. But I still think the Suns are going to win. I think they'll go up 2-0 in that series before the Lakers tie it up in Los Angeles. On Wednesday, Game 2, we have the Wizards taking on the 76ers, the Hawks at the Knicks, and the Grizzlies at the Jazz. The Wizards and 76ers, I think the 76ers will probably win, go up 2-0. And, Russ and Bradley Beal might make it close. But at home, I think I'm taking the 76ers. And if they didn't have Doc Rivers, honestly, they might blow the series. Just typical 76ers fashion. But they do, and they have enough talent on their team to take care of the Wizards. And if they don't, then they shouldn't even be in the playoffs. So I think the Sixers will go up 2-0. The Hawks and Knicks, this series I think is going to be back and forth the entire way, all the way through Game 7. So I think the Knicks will win at home. This is the series though that I think is the closest match. Well, this one and the Blazers and Nuggets are like the two series where they're so evenly matched in my opinion that I think every game might literally go back and forth, one game until the very end. And the Grizzlies versus Jazz at 8 o'clock on Wednesday. These are all Mountain Time standard, by the way. The Jazz, if Donovan Mitchell's going to play, they'll win. If he doesn't, who the hell knows? They still might lose because they lost last game, but they should win. Even if he doesn't play, they should win. And the Jazz, if they are a number 1 seed, like a real number 1 seed, they'll prove it. They're not going to go down 2-0 in Salt Lake. And if they did, well, I won't even really finish that sentence. I don't think that they will. Honestly, I think the Jazz if they should expose every flaw that the Memphis Grizzlies have. And I know the Grizzlies have been in playoff mode for a while now. And that's honestly probably why they won Game 1. They've been in do-or-die mode for a while now. They had to go through the NBA play-in tournament just to get here. They had to beat the San Antonio Spurs and Greg Popovich, who have been dominant for a decade. And then they had to go play the Golden State Warriors and Stephen Curry, who's the hottest player on the planet. And they beat both of them. They've been in do or die mode for a while now, and that's probably why they won game 1. That, and it helps that Donovan Mitchell was out. But if the Jazz are a true number 1 seed, they'll expose all the holes that the Grizzlies have on Wednesday, and they'll tie up the series. They'll play the good Jazz basketball that we've seen all year. Their excellent ball movement, their 3-point shooting. They shoot the 3-ball better than any team in the league. Well, they make the most threes. I don't know about percentage-wise, but they make the most threes in the entire NBA. And they have Rudy Gobert, defensive presence. They're a good team. So if they want to prove themselves to be worthy of that number 1 seed and the best record in the NBA, they will handle the Grizzlies at home to avoid going 0-2. Good number 1 seeds. First of all, they don't lose at home in the playoffs, but they definitely don't go down 2-0 to the Memphis Grizzlies. But if there is ever a number 1 seed that did it, it would be the Utah Jazz. And I'll actually talk about the game 3 just for the Trailblazers and Nuggets and Bucks Heat, because those 2 series, they've already played 2 games. They're sort of what I expected. So the Nuggets and Trailblazers, I expected that one to go to 7. And so I figured it would go back and forth. I thought the Blazers would win game 1, Denver would win game 2, which they did. But the Bucks and Heat, I thought the Heat would tie it up last night. I thought they were going to win the game and tie the series at 1.
Well, then I was way off!
But now, like I said a little bit earlier, the Heat aren't going down 0-3 with Jimmy Butler on their team. I know the Bucks are improved from last year, and the Heat, they don't have Victor Oladipo, but they didn't have him last year, and they handled this Bucks team in the playoffs, in the bubble, and they beat him in 5 games. 5 games with the MVP on their team. Jimmy Butler, when he wants to will his team to a game, he is capable of that. So I expect him to do that and avoid going into a 3-0 hole on Thursday. Damn, it is hot as hell in here. All right, that is all the time that I have for this episode of Sports House Podcast because I am dying of heat, sweating from my eyeballs. So if you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts so you'll be notified the next time I have an episode. All right, well, until next time, peace.
Sports House Podcast.
Doofenshmirtz quality bratwurst.